Vivek, are we live?
Yeah, you have done live. Yeah, we are live.
Yeah. Friends, a very good morning to all to this morning session. We welcome PR Ramesh, sir. Thank you, sir, for joining in this session. Friends, today's session is about statutory audit 2019-20, uh, limitation, solution, opportunities in wake of COVID-19. Friends, as we all know, as we are locked down in home during this COVID scenario, uh, it has become very challenging to, and whether, I mean, all are in a dilemma. How do we conduct the audit? Whether there is something we can do while sitting at home, whether what are the limitations? Is there any solution? Even after you see this lockdown is lifted, we are seeing that in some areas some relaxation is there, but yes, as we all know that we'll have some fear in next 1 to 3 months to come to get out of our home, or rather get back to a complete normal life. So under this circumstances, we have kept this topic so that you see with the expert and with PR Ramesh sir here, then I think when all of us would agree that when we have a best of the best with us to guide us that how we go through and overcome this hurdle. Actually, this is a big hurdle in the accounting and auditing profession, which we are seeing in at any time actually. So under this we'll have PR Ramesh deliberation, and then you can put your question in the chat box, or whether we can even also unmute you if you raise your hand through the Zoom app. Uh, Friends, we will start the session, but before starting the session, we would inform you about the next session which we are having in next few days. Tomorrow, that is 28th April, we are having a session with Avinash Poddar uh, on burning issues in GST, analysis of recent case laws. On 29th, we are having a session on IBC. Senior advocate Sumanta Batra will be there with us. On 30th April, friends, we will be having a panel discussion on young entrepreneurs' perspective on involvement of business post-COVID. For this, we will have the panelist, Mr. Mayank Jalan of Keventer Agro, Mr. Mehul Mohanka, Tega Industries, Mr. Kesav Bhajanka, Century Ply. On 1st May, this session on 1st May is at 5 p.m. It's about accepting a new normal, life after lockdown. This session would be taken by Ms. Minu Budhia, Founder Director, Caring Minds. So these are the sessions which we have planned in next coming few days. Friends, we would be soon reaching 50 sessions in during this lockdown period. Maybe the 3-4 sessions will be completing total 50 sessions which we have done on varied topics. Hope you are benefited with all our sessions. We tried to bring you the best speakers and the renowned speakers to you on the subject. So please do keep joining us on 11. And friends, one more initiative which ACAE has taken is about we have launched a e-bulletin wherein all the notification and circular which has been issued by any ministry, any government, any authorities during the COVID period has been put in all in one place. So this is a dynamic web link which has been sent to you by SMS, emails, and WhatsApp. So you can just click on the link and you will get to know all the updates. You see, this is the screen actually which we are having, and this link is being updated on a real-time basis. So you will have almost all the circulars under any section or under any subject at one place. So please also feel free to share with all your contacts. I think this would be very helpful in coming days where we would be wanting to have the circulars or see the circulars which have been issued under direct tax or indirect tax. So with this, friends, thank you once again for joining. And Vivek, please, I would, when you see PR Ramesh is a service our own, he has been our past president, but yes, we have many new participants joining in. Vivek, please introduce PR Ramesh.
Thank you, President. Respected speaker of the session, our most valued invited guest, and all the delegates who have joined this Zoom meeting, it's my privilege to introduce the speaker of the session. In the next hour, we would decode the topic Statutory Audit 1920, Limitation, Solution, and Opportunity in Wake of COVID-19 Crisis. Documentation, how to do audit if clients don't have scanned copy. Let's get some insight from someone who has more than 4 decades of experience and was his firm's national leader of audit and enterprise risk management. He was co-opted as a committee member of vision and restructuring of ICI as well. He has been past president of ACA and retired as a chairman of Deloitte India. Please welcome our speaker of the session, CRPR Ramesh. Thank you, everyone. So the session is yours.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you, President Jitendra Lohia. I must also thank Rick, both of you, Jitendra particularly, for your kind words. My special thanks to Sumantra Gua, who reached out to me and said I must speak on this topic. And when Sumantra asked, I don't think anybody has a choice, least of all, I hold him in a high regard, and therefore I'm fortunate to be able to be called upon to speak on this subject. Just to clarify, I'm not an expert. Nobody is an expert on situations around COVID-19. All I can do is I know how we were doing audits. I know what the new situation is, and try and throw some thoughts around how we should adapt to this situation. Last time when I spoke to you all, I didn't have a presentation. I realized thereafter that ideally in a webinar, one should have a presentation. In a physical meeting, it is not important to have a presentation, but in a webinar, it's important to have a presentation. So I will share the screen. Please bear with me for a minute while I do that. Are you able to see the presentation now?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So I like this title, Limitations, Solutions, Opportunities in the Wake of Crisis. So what I'll take you through is a very short background I'll speak about, and then some specific auditing issues so that we're laying a foundation for how to address those issues. We can talk about auditing, what we are doing all till now, and what the audit will look like post-COVID or during COVID, which we need to address. And of course, this will be a change in some way for all of us. And what are the benefits of the change and what will be the new normal, and some very concluding thoughts. So a brief background, yeah, you all know about COVID. It has impacted everybody across. It's a pandemic, really. It's not just a health pandemic, it's an economic pandemic. There are restrictions, quarantine measures, whole host of things. This is the toughest time for auditors. I've used the word interesting times, but I think this is the toughest time for auditors, because not only have they challenges on doing the audit, they also have significant audit issues which will arise in such an environment. There'll be accounting issues, measurement issues, treatment issues, and then of course for an auditor, challenges on verification, executing the audit, planning first of all, carrying out the audit, evaluating the audit results, reporting, all those considerations will arise. Of course, it's a much used cliche of that every crisis provides an opportunity, and this crisis is also an opportunity. And once we get used to this change, it will be the new normal for all of us. How are we doing the audit till now? Oh, significantly, whilst there are different levels. In a very mature organization, highly digitized environment, the audit will be different. But overall, we still did not give up verification of how looking at hard copies of documents, whether it's vouchers, invoices, agreements, etc. We carried out a lot of work at clients' premises. We didn't do so much work remotely. I don't think there was any audit which was done completely remotely in the past. Maybe it is now. It is being done, has been done rather. And physical account, the recommendations guidance was always to be to observe physical inventory verification of inventory, and we used to carry out physical verifications of cash as part of cutoff procedures. And in some types of institutions like banks, maybe normally we would count cash. In certain other entities, cash would not be significant. You may not even count cash. And a lot of emphasis on external confirmations through post, which used to come either by physical mail or by emails, but still a lot was sent out by physical mails coming in. Now I don't even see a mailman in this lockdown scenario. And then communications with clients were always in person, because you're at the site, you are in person, you presented to audit committees in person, you met the boards in person, and well, your interactions with all levels of the organization were significantly in person. And then you had, even though in some highly digitized environments, there was much of what we used to use the term in the past called audit around the computer. This was the way we used to do audit. Now, how are things in this scenario? You see, a lot has moved into it, but it's more about connected workspaces today. There's been a significant shift. We moved towards looking at internal controls 1920s, and much later we looked at all these virtual tools, which were there, digital tools, and a lot more towards doing an audit using technology. And increasingly, we found that because of the number of locations the clients were, because of the number of audits people were handling simultaneously in some situations, it was important. It resulted in people being accessing remotely and being also connected remotely. The change was already happening in a way, because once we had the uniform accounting year, you were actually running from pillar to post with everybody having the same financial year, doing multiple audits. And in some situations, it was appropriate to be at a single location, interact with each one remotely, and that's how the teams were. And then you had, teams which were originally structured like this, with an audit partner, you had a manager, you had somebody on tax, and then you had all the staff. But now, with the technology, as things moved, then what happened, all of these started shifting in terms of using specialists who are cybersecurity specialists, IT specialists, because you need to draw comfort in the IT environment. You need to test general information technology controls. You need to test specific controls in applications. And then you had a lot of information which was coming digitally, and the ability to be able to manipulate that data and do a very focused audit was possible only if you were digitally equipped or you had technology specialists as part of your teams. Increasingly, people either used from the outside such specialists or had such specialists as part of the team. So the old thing about audit around the computer was a black box, had disappeared quite some time ago. And with the advent of ERP systems and very, very complex systems using digital technologies, I don't think anybody has a choice. And then, because access is remote, and because clients were very concerned about digital systems, and the security was so tight, in a physical system, the physical document is available with the client, there was not much concern. But if in a digital system, and particularly if you have to access remotely, one needed very, very secure environment, and that's how this virtual private networks came in. Firewalls started getting built in so that others could not access in. And then auditors too needed to be equipped with all of this to be able to access systems. Many platforms, allow auditors to get access only through this very, very secure environment. So it's not something unlike in the past where you would walk into a client's office and then look at vouchers. Now, even if you are to do remotely, it is not easy. Just as much as everybody needed a security feature to cross a security barrier, digital security barrier, those started getting introduced in all these platforms. And then from a communication point of view, we have all these virtual tools, which one of them we are using now. We're using Zoom now. Of course, we're using Facebook too, and Skype, Microsoft Teams, Blue Jeans, whole host of things. So what are some of the considerations in a remote audit? One clearly is, since you're not physically seeing a document, it's important to know that the information which is provided to you is accurate, is complete, is relevant, and in the context of sharing, there is no dilution which is happening, and it's in an absolutely very, very secure manner. We need to be mindful of cyber attacks, and clients are very, very mindful of this, and that is why they don't allow access easily. But one of the advantages of digital environment and digital audit, as I said, every crisis provides an opportunity, is the ability to do an audit at any time you like. In the past, we had to go to a client's office during client's working hours, and if it was a factory location, we had to take the factory bus, we stick to the bus timings, whether we like it or not, irrespective of our office timings. But in a digital environment, you can do anytime. You can do midnight, you can do early in the morning, whatever time you are. But critical to all of this is the security, which is VPNs and firewall systems are absolutely essential. And then a lot of documents in a number of organizations today are already scanned and digitally available. There are, of course, organizations which are so highly digital that everything is online. Approvals are online. The documents are also digitally filled in. There is no hard copies of documents. But then you have others who have hard copies of documents, who upload the hard copies of documents, including banks. And they have those scanned copies of documents available. What we need to be mindful of is the reliability of these scanned source documents. And what are the controls around it? I remember a point in time a few years ago where one day I was called to a particular city to issue a certificate on utilization of funds, and that was in a company in a project stage. So I went in there to issue, and I was going there after 9 months. So I said, I'd like to see what was the certificate I last issued. So is it from that date to this date I can, do the transaction verification? And I'm not talking too long ago, I'm talking about maybe 10 years ago. And the certificate was shown to me, which had been signed by me, etc., a PDF document submitted to the banks for utilization of funds. And then I was somehow puzzled because I don't remember going to the city around that date in the certificate. And then when I clicked on the certificate, which was sent to me digitally too, I found that my signature came in a box, shaded box. And then the date was also in a shaded box. That means somebody had forged, cut paste my signature and cut paste the date and put it in that the certificate. So it was a false document. So even a digital document, just because I couldn't just at first sight make out, but as you know, this is the biggest challenge which we all have. Those of you who have deep knowledge of what happened in Satyam will realize that a lot of it was digitally tailored documents, and which was shown to the auditors, whether it's bank statements, bank confirmations, etc. That is why in the current environment, even if you would like to do something remotely, we need to be mindful of the credibility of the digital documents, even if they are scanned documents. And now we have no choice but to test the scanned document. I'll come to some of the methodologies which we can talk about. External confirmation, which used to be earlier sent by post and courier, now the new approach is you start sending mails and get back by mails. Now you also need to ensure that the mails come into a very secure mailbox of yours, and it has to be responded. I still remember when we did the investigation of Satyam, even though I sent out a confirmation, the banker would respond to the company. Now the company would forward the confirmation to me. How would I know it is not? How do I know it's not tailored? It's already reconfigured and sent to me. So we had created a separate confirmation mailbox so that the bank would send those confirmations to our mailbox directly. I think that is absolutely critical in the current environment too, that if we are to do remote audit, we need something coming direct to us and not through the company. So we need to establish that direct contact with third party and ensure that the communication is encrypted in some way. And try and avoid, public mails, things like Yahoo, Google, etc. If you have a secured environment, it is better. Inventory is one big area we all talk about. That's being in a remote basis. How do you do even inventory verification? Many clients don't allow copying of inventory records into the system. This itself is a challenge. But platforms do provide viewing facilities. You could view documents, bill of entry, inventory valuation, product records. So theoretically, you can do an audit of inventory on a remote basis, but we'll come to the physical verification of inventory a little later. Yeah, now this slide covers the physical verification of inventory. It is possible to do physical inventory through video conferences. If you and I are able to see each other, all you need is somebody at site. Now that is absolutely critical. You need to have somebody at site. There are also certain tools where you can access the person's camera itself and then take images into your system. But even without that, even using normal WhatsApp, you are able to take a look at what's happening there and perhaps do a count. And this has been done. It is not that it has not been done. In current scenario, it has been done. But the challenge will always be of huge volumes. The challenge will be of, if there are multiple teams doing it, how do you correlate with each of those teams? I think you need to have that many people to be able to connect with each of those teams, or do on a selective basis, you start participating in inventory verification. But the fact is, in the absence of other digital tools which we can access remotely today, this is one way of doing it. I know the very, very advanced counting mechanisms are there where RFID chips are all there, but we are not there as yet. My talk is a general talk because there will be a number of companies who all of a sudden are caught in this lockdown. Their systems are not necessarily geared towards addressing a lockdown situation and particularly a physical verification. And in each of this, you will still have the challenges of being able to look at the quality of things. How much will you unpack? How will you do that? You have timing issues, etc. Then physical verifications, other documents which you can also verify uh, through video calls, which can be done, inward, outward documents, scanned copies can be sent to you. A lot of things is possible. The challenge is, and this is the balance which we need to ask ourselves, is it about effectiveness of audit or efficiency of audit? There will be a compromise. If you want the audit to be very effective in the current environment, do it remotely. There will be a compromise on efficiency. It may not be the most efficient way. It may be a bit more time consuming, far more use of video and other documents. You're physically not there. It may be slower in a number of situations. But the fact is, technology companies have been able to complete the audits. They have been able to complete because everything is otherwise also digitally available. Even when you were in a technology company, if you were in a client office, you were into a room and everybody had laptops and they used to access the systems and do the audit. Is the only difference which happened now is they are accessing it remotely. So it is nothing so dramatic for doing a technology company audit as opposed to other companies audit, because there is no inventory there. The inventory is what? Unbilled revenue, which is work in progress. Time records are digital. Expense report, every expense report is digital. Uh, Billings are digital, and critical items which one needs to look at in those cases is digital. So there is no reason why in those cases an audit cannot be carried out, and that's why you'll find a number of companies which have announced results are all technology companies. Technically, yes, you can even observe cash count by video call. Property, plant, and equipment. Physical verification documents, you can, the fact that your physical verification is being carried out, even in a normal situation, you ask for those documents, digital documents in view of the huge volume. Now, that can still be accessed, but because of the size, there will be challenges insofar as mail is concerned. But then there are other means of you being provided access to those servers to be able to verify those documents. The real challenge will be insofar as site visits, etc. In many cases, to know whether an asset is to be capitalized or not, we used to carry out site visits. That will be a challenge today, unless there is somebody there, again, like inventory verification at site, showing you through video, and you are able to access that video and see the actual site condition without physically going there. In fact, when we get used to this in future, we may not even go to those sites. We may say, tell the guy there to run a video, and then we will see how the site is, what is the stage of completion, etc. It's not that there is nothing which is done and suddenly you are capitalizing that project. But really what can happen is that there are other accounting factors in property, plant and equipment in terms of not being used. So the question of extent of depreciation which needs to be provided. As you know, Institute had come up with a very comprehensive guidance on accounting and auditing in a COVID environment. In the accounting, they had also mentioned about interest capitalization during prolonged periods of suspension as it is now. Cash balances, you can do a walkthrough of cash and bank payments using screen sharing. That is possible because somebody doing the work, the screen can be shared. Just like how I'm sharing a presentation and all of you are seeing that, it is possible for that to be done. But then you will also need to be able to look at cash confirmations by sharing the online screen, where somebody accesses the bank system online, shows you the balance, and then there is a screen sharing, as opposed to taking a screenshot and sending you an image, which can be doctored in a way. But before we get on to how do we adapt to each of these, what will be some of the specific auditing issues which arise in a COVID environment? This is also very important. There's a institute guidance note. I would urge, not guidance, institute guidance, not a guidance note. I would urge you to look at that guidance. But let's look at some of the specifics. The first one is the whole impact on our audit plan. You need to start before you even begin your audit now in a COVID environment, remotely or otherwise. You need to ask yourself, what are those changes which are required to my audit plan? Have we focused on the right audit risk? How will you report on internal financial controls? Would be able to execute the audit? Are there enough client staff at the location? If the client is lockdown technology company, in a technology company, as you know, there are critical people running the technology systems. And therefore, even though the CFO could be sitting at home, you are sitting at home, you can still do the audit, or the whole finance team could be sitting at home. Now, if you need to plan, how do you evaluate the IT controls during a lockdown? Now, even IT controls, particularly the general information technology control and specific program controls, are done accessing client systems. There is no need to be physically present there, except that in the past it convenient, because once you are in the client premises and accessing through the client's networks, then
Ramesh,
automatically for the secure
Ramesh, Ramesh, we are facing an issues related to your.
Yeah.
If you can switch off your video, I think bandwidth will increase.
My video?
Yes, yes, just the video.
Sure. 1 minute.
Just click on the stop video and you can check. I think that is
1 minute. Perfect.
Yeah, perfect.
Then everybody else has to also switch off the video.
No.
Okay.
It's about
That's
your
good.
broadband. Yes, bandwidth.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So the ability to, I spoke about this, we need to, in the planning itself, look at, can we adequately verify, confirm the credibility of the scanned documents which are provided? What is the mechanism which is available? Why is this not moving? Yeah. Then this engagement risks. As part of planning, the next you always do is a risk. I'm just touching upon some of the audit issues. You need to assess the impact or the economic impact on the business. Irrespective, we are not here to only please the client. We have other loyalties which we need to take care of and our own risks which we need to worry about. So we need to clearly, as you know, without addressing the economic impact of the business, carrying out an audit in the normal manner is meaningless. You need to be able to walk in with a certain expectation. What do you expect to see? And that is something you need to be aware of when you actually do a engagement risk analysis and understanding of the whole economic environment in which the business is operating. and whether there has been a supply chain disruption. If so, what do you expect to see? If there has been a supply, production is being reported, you need to be on the alert. Is there a demand side risk? What are the plans of the management post recovery? What layoff plans are there? Because that will require you to consider the risk of provisioning for employee compensations. So what is the issue? We'll talk about cash flow risks and going concern risks, but those are extremely critical, and particularly the overall liquidity position and the ability to meet the covenants, because breach of covenants could result in defaults. There has been some time given insofar as the payment is concerned, but I'm not sure the relaxations in covenants have happened across the board. And then the geographical spread of the customers, the ability of the customers to pay, the downgrading of the rating material. So just raising some issues. These are part of the audit processes, and we need to document this. Now, most clients use sophisticated ERP systems. Okay. These sophisticated ERP systems have enough data, and your ability to be able to navigate and manipulate data is critical. You need to test the controls around that, and I think that is true for every other thing. So the simple thing is you need to be completely involved digitally in this manner. Now, force majeure consideration something everybody force majeure clauses. You need to be mindful of this, whether it is vendors, customers, lessees, etc. What is its impact on your audit? Verify this particular documented, and these should be substantial in with confirmations. It will be just somebody says, oh, he invoked a force majeure without providing you evidence. These are some of the audit issues. The big audit issue will always be provision for expected credit loss. Those which are on Ind AS, and all of them will, most are on Ind AS. Here is where a lot of work needs to be done. This is all data driven. And in terms of probability, what is the risk of default? What is the probability of default in the loss PD and LGD, loss given default? And if you are in a simplified method also, you need to be able to assess and tweak the formulae, because the past data may not necessarily be relevant in terms of providing for expected credit loss. And if you are doing a group audit with a number of subsidiaries, you need to be able to see how can you interact with those auditors of those subsidiaries. Because if you can't interact with those auditors of those subsidiaries and have video calls, screen sharing, etc., then I don't think you can sign off on consolidated financial statements. You need to be able to get those responses from your component auditor and be able to rely on the work of the component auditor. So there is a lot in a group audit which needs to be done, which is something which, and then the risks of fraud. Every time there is a crisis, there has been a fraud. Or in many situations in the past I've come across, there used to be a fraud, a crisis created to cover up a fraud. I still remember, for those of you, all of you are in Calcutta, so many of you will relate to this. Years ago, I remember there was a central bank office in Clive Row, and then that had a fire. And everybody thought, oh, there is a fire, oh, how unfortunate, etc. No, the fire, those were the days of manual records. The fire was created to actually cover up a fraud. And that was revealed much later on. So many times, either when there is a fire, there is a fraud which is used, fraud which is being covered up, or you can, in a chaotic situation, you will find that fraud to have loss. How can, what is the level of frauds? What could we need to, I don't want to elaborate too much on this, but the key for doing an audit remotely is you need to ask yourself, will you be able to accumulate sufficient appropriate audit evidence? That is the key, because in any audit, these words, sufficient appropriate audit evidence, become the most important thing. If you can't obtain sufficient opinion, it will be a serious limitation on the way it is. Then you need to consider a scope limitation and how will you modify your opinion on that. Just to give some illustrations, spoken about cash and cash equivalents, bank reconciliations, etc. This is possible digitally. In fact, most bank reconciliations are prepared digitally. Verification of, looking at screen sharing of all the bank accounts gives you some sort of confirmation, supplemented with independent confirmations, cash verification through video. If cash is very significant, if cash is not significant, there's nothing you can do. And anyway, now the date has gone by. I don't think you can, if you do a cash verification, still you need to work back. That is something which is there. Sampling you can, if the child be in the size of the data which is provided to you. Now, if you have to even select a sample, it has to be from the population. Unless you're given access rather than the ability to dump into something, you can't receive data on email, because any attachments in mail will have limitations. So you have to have remote access to be able to, and just now as the president remarked that there could be a bandwidth issue from my side, there could be bandwidth issues all the time, depending on how many people are accessing the systems and where you are located and what is the quality of your bandwidth. So even if you're provided access, the ability to access in terms of that bandwidth is the issue which is there. And confirmations I've spoke about. So I think it is important to be able to look at particularly the roll forward procedures or roll back procedures, and more importantly, it's roll back now, because you would have done verification. You may be doing verifications now, but if you have done the verification somewhere in the interim, then you need to do roll forward procedures to March. Those are some, and critically, use of videos for inventory verification is must. You can't express an opinion today without inventory verification. So for non-technology companies, inventory becomes a big challenge. Establishing cutoffs insofar as revenue, because you need to be satisfied that the deliveries have actually taken place. To not only view the delivery documents, but to also look at inward, outward registers, etc., which, if they are manually maintained, you need to have, scanned copies of those or view those through digital means by way of a video camera at that point in time. These are unusual situations, but just as much as if you are not able to access any particular place in the past, you were adapting to some sort of auditor's report, revisiting the key audit matters. What is the going concern material uncertainty? Caro reporting security. Now, COVID-19 by itself is a audit matter, but the impact of COVID-19 is a key audit matter, and you need to look at what is the impact of COVID-19 on various things. And that is something which you need to be mindful of and exercise judgment. And in the audit, you've found, if you see many of the recent audit reports, some have an emphasis of matter on COVID, some have mentioned on key audit matters, but we still have to, in the current situation, report on internal control. Again, in so long as a larger proportion of controls are IT controls as opposed to manual controls, this may be easier. But if it is manual controls, you need to again look at whether that document has been authorized, whether it has been reviewed. That again would require you to rely on imaging of those documents, just as you would do in a physical way. The question of observing a control in operation becomes meaningless now, because the year end is past. If at all somebody is doing something now, it is for this period. If you have done that observation remotely, digitally in the past, of course you can rely upon it. Going concern assessment is very, very, very critical. I think this is something, thankfully, the new CARO has been deferred. Otherwise, the new CARO had huge challenges in reporting upon probability of default. But this whole assessment becomes far too critical. And I think you need to challenge all the data, receive all this data. So sum and substance, what I'm trying to say is, there are two sorts of situations which are possible. One is a situation where you are able to do an audit fully remotely. That is still possible today. But for certain type of companies, it is not possible for other type of companies. The second is how much of work for the other companies you can do now, even on a remote basis, so that once the lockdown is removed, you are able to quickly sign off and still meet the June 30th SEBI deadline insofar as signing of financial statements is concerned. So you need to start thinking right now, saying what are those tasks which you can do. And as I said, start revisiting from the audit plan itself. And that's exactly what some of us have done, because we said, okay, it's not that everybody is sitting at home today, just as we're keeping each one busy. Most audit staff are kept busy doing audits remotely. So that when lockdown is lifted, only companies, the board minutes are manual and not available digitally. So only when the lockdown is lifted, then you are able to look at board minutes, or they able to share scanned copies of board minutes. But in many other situations, you can do the work, rely on the documents, but reconfirm when the lockdown is lifted and you are able to go there at site. I spoke about going concern assessments. This is absolutely critical. And then the implications on the financial reporting. The key areas in terms of whether the matters, including the COVID-19 impact, whether it has been brought down. I once again urge all of you to look at the Institute guidance on accounting and auditing, which is, I think, a very comprehensive document, a very useful inputs. It points you in all those areas which you need to spend time. This could cover borrowing costs, as I said, interest capitalization. It could result in provisions and contingent liability. Fair value measurements become extremely critical. So, and then the management assumptions and comparative information. Impairment of assets, you need to revisit this assumptions in terms of discount rates and the discrete periods, the time, etc. This is a lot of judgment. I can, give you a reality when you look at it. What will be the future? It's a huge. One thing you can be sure of, if cash flows are the same as what were given to you last year with 1 year remote, then
Sir,
those are
Ramesh, sorry to interrupt, but
clearly,
Ramesh, sir, sorry to interrupt, but
yeah.
can you just adjust an internet a bit? Actually, your voice is continuously breaking.
I can shift to another internet. Let me see.
I think that would be better, sir.
Sure. Just hold on. One.
Yes.
Yeah, this should be. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Now I think it's there. Yes, sir. Please continue.
Yeah, but I don't know why it says internet connection unstable. This is supposed to be 300 Mbps internet connection now. The one I shipped.
Jitu, the video is off now of Mr. Ramesh. The video is
Ramesh sir, you can also switch on the video right now. I think this is stable right now. The voice is coming clear, so? Quite clear. Yeah. You can start.
I moved from a 40 Mbps Airtel one, because what happens is, in some of these other service providers, we have Beam here, which gives very high speed, 300 Mbps, even 1 Tbps also.
Right.
In that 300 Mbps, when the power goes off, even though I have standby power in my house, from where they supply, if they don't have power, there's no internet. So that's why I rely on the telecom companies providing bandwidth, because there nothing happens. So that was only a slower bandwidth of 40 Mbps. Anyway, this proved the point very much that you can't do remote audit unless you have adequate bandwidth. And I'm glad this practical example was good enough. So back to this accounting and auditing issues, inventory write-downs will be big time, because quality of inventory, particularly if you're in perishables, in a lockdown environment, I think huge write-downs are required. A lot of these, and those with expiry dates, those expiry dates would have gone way past. We need to speak here, it's not about just verifying quantity and value. Far more time we need to spend in terms of determining the carrying value of inventory. Yeah, borrowing costs I spoke about. All of these are covered in the ICI guidance, so please look at it. Fair value always is an opinion, and I've mentioned this before in conferences. There was so much fear of fair value that people used to call it fear value. And I remember in Gauhati, somebody asked me the question, what is fear value and all that. So clearly the uncertainties in this is the fear. Income taxes, we need to look at if there is a deferred tax asset. What is the probability of this, the ability to frank the deferred tax asset? This is one of the big issues, and whether we need to recognize any further deferred tax provisions and contingents, particularly onerous contracts, whether obligations. You need to look at that contingent asset. We have to be mindful of. Now, the core in every company is revenue. We have to look at the price discounts which will come as a result of having to push sales. The discounts which may have been offered also in the past. Now, this will affect inventory valuation because of the realizable value, etc. Companies may have also postponed revenue recognition because of the doubts on collectability issue. There could be bill and hold sort of situations where companies will get letters from all parties saying due to lockdown we could not take delivery of the material. Please treat the material as having been bought and hold it on our behalf. Now, all those sort of letters will be shown to you, including digitally. We have sold this, we couldn't deliver because of lockdown. Be mindful of that particular thing. You'll come across a lot of those cases as to whether really a sale has taken place. And this is something which I don't put it beyond company. They used to do that when there is pressure on sales. And the financials must disclose all the measurements, uncertainties, and how those have been dealt with. Goodwill impairment will be a big issue. Again, any tangible will be subject to impairment, just as you have fair value issues, because all this is dependent on future cash flows, probability of default, etc. Revenue and other expenses, you are able to, if you're able to verify the three-way matching of automated payment cycle, you should do that between order, supply, and the billing which has happened. I spoke about bill and hold sales, stock in transit. You need to be really mindful of this as to whether the stock is in transit and is in condition, and look at subsequent events. So when you're looking at audit on a remote basis, property, plant, and equipment, it is possible to look at fixed asset register remotely, look at additions, deletions remotely, look at the capital work in progress listing remotely, including the physical verification remote. Inventory, aging reports you can do digitally, quantitative reconciliations can be looked remotely, details can be verified remotely, cost and RV considerations, all that can be, even physical verification we spoke about can be done using videos remotely. Accounts receivable is always remote. So even when you're at customer side, you're relying on data. So I don't think that's so much of an issue. If you're provided all the information, it is possible for you to take a view on accounts receivable. Of course, relating it to the sales. Even cash and cash equivalents, I don't find a big issue insofar as doing work remotely. In fact, we can do that work even now insofar as looking at bank reconciliation, reviewing all bank reconciliations, obtaining confirmations for all deposits, bank guarantees, etc. In terms of verification of expenses, etc., selecting samples will depend on the ability you're given to, or insofar as access. And if most of the documents are digitally available, you can even carry out the audit. Otherwise, you'll have challenges in verifying delivery documents or other customer orders, etc. So, in summation, it is possible to do an audit, but be mindful of addressing the audit issues. But more importantly, which I will summarize a little later, there are certain critical success factors which are listed at the end of, which I'll show you at the end of this presentation. It is possible to do, if not the whole audit, a large part of the audit even now digitally. Just think, what were you doing in the customer's office? Other than calling us a finance professional.
Ramesh, sorry to disturb, but the voice is again breaking actually.
Is it baking because of the
So
cord? I don't
if it
know.
puts off the video, will it work, Jitu?
I'll again switch off and see, because
Yeah, yeah.
sometimes it is the cord, I have
Yeah,
had problems with the cord, not so much
I,
the
I, I think
bandwidth.
I think so. I think the cord is the issue actually. I mean, if you see,
But doesn't matter. I'm almost towards the end. Please bear with me,
yeah.
but I'll still switch off the video for whatever it is worth. Okay. I'll try and shake my hands less or my head less so that the
Sir, now it is fine, sir. Now it is fine.
the problem with South Indians is they tend to shake their body a lot. You know how, and I am no exception. That's the truth. So the benefits of challenges in doing this new way on audit, there are significant benefits which we are already used to. Clearly, no physical documents, very good. You are able to do a huge level of analytics, which using digital technologies, you can use AI too, and a lot more data you can look at digitally, which you can't do manually. And of course, you don't have to worry about storage, etc., physical record room, or where do I keep files, etc. I think we all have to move towards a digital environment. It's I know there are challenges in terms of having technology at affordable cost, and I'm sure the professional body will do a lot in that. But the more we can have all files electronic, you can find the convenience is phenomenal, because you are able to work from anywhere. You're able to share information remotely. In fact, we're reaching such a situation where, sitting at home, I can look at what is the level of audit done by each one of the professionals, because I can access their systems and see if they are updating a work paper. I can see it live as to where they are. No longer it is about calling on the phone and saying, "Ye check kiya kya?" He says, "Haan, haan, sab kuch check kiya hai." So now remotely I can see what he has checked and what it is. So one of the greatest advantages this COVID has presented to us is to be able to shift to that. We need to be able to share those digital tools across the profession. And so long as, if it is uniform, even better, then everybody has the same sort of tools which interface with the ERP systems of today, and which are able to interface with all platforms as far as possible. Clearly, it therefore means saving in time, money, and with technology, avoiding travel, which is a huge thing. And I'm not sure even whether you would want to travel in future, apart from international travel being very difficult with visas not being. So the logistics related issues actually will disappear, as opposed to logistics related issues where, conference room need to be available, you need to get train tickets, plane tickets, all those things are over. And everybody will feel comfortable already working from home. I know there's some of them are concerned about. So what are those critical success factors before I take questions? And I was mindful of the time too. I didn't want to spend too much time on a lot of things. First is, if you can't have secure access to data and availability of information digitally, don't think of doing an audit during a COVID environment. It is not possible. Otherwise, you'll be wasting your time, and there will be, you'll have to redo a lot of those things. Bandwidth is critical. You can keep trying and adapting yourself, like how I said, stop, video, do sort of things like that to improve the bandwidth usage and the data transfer. But the speed of data transfer depends on the bandwidth, and speed depends on the number of people using the systems at the same point in time. So that is something which will be a challenge in a remote audit. And of course, we all have to be technology literate. Otherwise, we need to have help in what it is. Confidentiality is something which we need to be able to maintain, which is a secure environment. Communicating, well, if we are able to do this, video conferencing, Skype, Zoom, etc., I think now everybody is able to do. So this is something which is given and it is possible. But if you have to be effectively do an audit, as opposed to efficiently do an audit, you need analytical and forensic tools, because everything is digital. You'll be dumped with volumes. And this is something which was required even in a digital environment, even without COVID or lockdown. And that is something we have to aid our auditors, and they have to use this to be able to analyze. Just some things like how many times the same customer has bought the same product at different prices in the same month. Has the same product on the same day been sold at different prices to different customers? When you manipulate large volumes of data as opposed to looking at samples, you can test a lot of these things for outlier things. You can look at returns by customer. How many times has he returned the same thing? And then do a lot of that analysis, and then you will find that those sales may be bogus because they will be booked as sales and come back subsequently as returns. A lot of analysis I can speak about. The ability to document the evidence is critical. You see, it's not just about our ability to obtain sufficient, appropriate evidence and give a report. We are all subject to inspection. Tomorrow, whether it is ICAI or NFRA will ask for your files. And if you don't have the evidence, you say, oh, no, I looked at it digitally. I did that video conference. I did all that. But there has to be some evidence available in your files. If you don't have that evidence, you will have challenges in being able to answer some of the requirements of those inspections. And lastly, your auditor's office, and whether it is home or office, should be in a high technology environment. So the future of audit, undoubtedly, this is the new way, COVID or without COVID. And I think let's look at in this way. Let's see how can we do an audit remotely. Then we can do a lot more work as professionals, even sitting in our offices or in our homes. It doesn't matter whether a particular thing is closed or not closed, whether it's festival or not festival. As people say, I need a day's leave because I have to go and attend my friend's funeral or whatever it is. Now, it doesn't matter. You go attend your friend's funeral, thereafter remotely work. There is nothing, so there is no wastage of time significantly you can make up. And those who are technology prepared, they are the ones who can sustain in this challenging environment. And I'll stop by quoting Mahatma Gandhi, who said, you must be the change you wish to see in the world. Thank you very much, and I hope I have kept time.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for the wonderful presentation. Sir, as you said that you are now this for this session, you have come up with the presentation. But sir, let me tell you and to the audience, your last session was viewed by more than 4,500 people online, and that
Oh
was
my
the
God.
most. Friends, please put your
That is
question.
the problem with digital. You don't know who's viewing, how many are viewing. There is no secrecy. Absolutely.
Jitu, there was one question for Ramesh sir on AS7 on accounting standard 7 construction contracts. I think there was one question, and there was another how to factor in AS7 while doing the audit, and there was another question on how really you document NFRA and for NFRA and for ICI, how do you really document evidence which you had gathered during COVID-19 to carry out the audit? You mentioned, of course, that you have to collect evidence, but if you could specify a little further on that.
Answer the second one first, and then I'll come to AS7 too. You know, ability to document evidence depends upon volume, and that is the challenge. You know, I can technically store a whole video, but my file will be so bulky. In any scanned documents, the file will be so bulky. So it is about that ability to strike a balance. All I'm saying is you don't need to document your whole physical verification video. Even if you have document snapshots of video, it will mean you have carried out something, right? You couldn't have had that image if you had not done something. Bank confirmations, as I said, storing screenshots is important. But always be mindful that the storage capacity is directly proportional to the volume of data you want to store. That will be the biggest challenge. You can't share volumes of data on emails. Email attachments is always a restriction. And then your electronic files also will become too bulky. Today already NFRA itself is facing a huge challenge. When they ask the file, they are now facing a huge challenge because even digital file, they say you break it up into 25 MB size each component and give. So you have to give sometimes 300 different pieces put together in 25 MB size to NFRA. I think one has to get over those days. They will also, regulators too will find ways to access your system digitally. Otherwise, it's impossible. How will I give different 25 MB pieces? And if the pieces are all jumbled up, how will one put the file together, which was the original file in my system? So that is the first one. And then AS7, I know I'm outdated. AS7 is the old standard, and which is different from the revenue recognition standard,
Yes,
which has
yes.
captured all of it. But the point in the AS7 is on percentage completion, and percentage completion a lot, and the cost to complete. There is much less in a completed contract method, it becomes far more easier. But in percentage completion method, it is, that's why I said, how do you, in many situations, you used to do site visits to determine is, if they say 30% complete, is that building 30% complete? Is that bridge or dam or whatever it is 30% complete? Some physical view, it's not that you are such an expert by looking at it, you know it is 30%, but at least you know it is not 0%. That is the sort of a thing. Then you supplement it with other data which they provide. But most important in that is the stage of completion and the cost to complete. Now, cost to complete, even in the past, was the information obtained in terms of data which is digital. Anything which is data is possible to obtain digitally. Judgments are only where you need to see something physically. That is where you need imagery, or you need to be there physically yourself.
Sumantoda, can we have next question from the chat box?
Yeah. Vivek, you have any questions? Vivek,
yeah,
you said?
yeah. Priya sir, thanks for a lovely deliberation. Sir, in one of our case, the client is on the verge of sale and a client requires the balance sheet. We have got the VPN access and everything, but client doesn't have document management system. So none of the documents are scanned and client is neither in a position to give the scan because it's in a complete shutdown. So is there any other way of audit around it? I don't find anything. So without
No,
physical
don't
and
even
all.
take the risk. As I said, it's not enough you being digital, client has to be digital. If client is digital, you're not digital, also it's not possible.
Correct, sir.
That is just not possible.
The second question, we had sent some mails for the confirmation to the banks, and banks are saying only registered mail ID will give the confirmation. So, and client is also mailing the bank, but they are not taking the confirmation. They're not giving the confirmation.
The banks can give confirmations if the client directs them to send it to a particular
Mail ID.
mail ID. That instruction has to come from a registered mail ID of a
Clients.
Otherwise, today there are many, if you want to look at defaults, etc. In fact, NFRA had also given that guidance. You can look at the information utility, which is part of the IBC, and look at the exposures.
But sir, in that information utility, the IBC is not giving access to the auditors. They don't have the provision to give access to the auditors.
No, in fact, they are wanting, in that agencies wanted it to be part of CARO.
Yeah, they wanted, but I had a talk with the MD. We in our IBC program of ACA, we had a talk also on this, and there is no provision to give a registration to the auditors for this purpose.
That's why we need systems like they are abroad, where there are agencies which are able to access all banks and provide you confirmation.
Correct, sir. Correct, sir. Thank you, sir. Samundra.
Any other questions? I mean, from the chat box, I can find. 1 minute. There are.
You can pick and choose, Sumatra, because some questions will be ICAI related, which you may have to answer.
Nothing in the chat
You are
box.
finding any questions?
No, there's nothing in the chat box. Anyone have a question, they can raise their hand directly.
Yes.
Sumantoda, I think we may conclude actually most. You see the rich input given by the PRMS, definitely they will be rather digesting all this.
Yes.
And yes, we have one question just from Mr. Gopal.
How do we comply with the IFC requirement of financial closure process when there is complete shutdown?
It is possible. You see, what happens is, again, it is important. What is IFC process? Those internal financial controls over financial reporting includes a combination of IT-driven controls and a combination of non-IT controls. Now, you can test IT controls remotely. Non-IT controls are tested by observation, reperformance, walkthrough, etc. Those things reperformance can be done remotely, and you can see evidence of a review having been done or evidence of something which, in what you do in a client place, you're not going to stand beside the client and see how the client is preparing financial statements. So I think this is more a concern which you have, but we are seeing ghosts where there are none. There is really nothing to worry about. It is.
Any further questions?
Yes, Sumanta, I think you can conclude.
Yes, yes. Well, we've had a very lively and a very enthralling session on accounting and auditing in the COVID environment. I think Ramesh sir was right that only technology companies. There is one question which is coming up. I think we can take that. Vivek.
Yeah, sir, please throw some light on evaluation of internal control in digital audit era by Kaushik Ghosh.
Again, it's a very generic question, and my answer will also be generic in this way, because it varies from company to company. I have seen even in sophisticated IT companies, there were still a lot of manual controls. The more there are automated controls, you need technology specialists to test the automated controls. And those controls, whether it is an access control, whether it is a program control, whether it is program changed controls which are there, those are controls which a technology specialist does. There are a series of tests which are done. It depends on the number of applications, the nature and type of those applications, the excess of access granted, how many super users are using it, what are the type of logs available. Some you can, through review of logs, see whether those controls are in place. And then there are firefighting situations which happen. Look at the firefighting logs also, what happened during firefighting scenarios. A very generic answer, but broadly I'm saying if there are manual controls, you can look at the manual controls even digitally by having evidence produced to you, scanned documents or otherwise. Just look at what would you otherwise do when you're doing an audit at a client's premises. Are you doing real time? No. You are doing post mortem in most of the situations, whether it is of digital controls or whether it is non-digital controls. It's the same thing what you would seek remotely. The digital controls you are accessing there, sitting in a client place, as I mentioned, you can do that access remotely, provided you are in a security protocols are all well established. Non-digital controls can be by verification of those documents, which can be produced to you, which can be scanned and shown to you, but you need to be satisfied with the credibility of it. If you are uncomfortable, wait till the lockdown ends to go and reconfirm what you have done, so that what you have got as scanned is actually the original.
Yes, thank you, Ramesh sir. As you said, necessity is the mother of invention. So we have invented ways and means of how to start doing audit remotely. And since SEBI has also extended the guidelines by 1 month, I mean the deadline by 1 month, only technology companies actually declared their financials. Others have not. And as you rightly said, that where there is the slightest risk of not being able to see everything, it would be it would not be fair, it would not be correct, in fact, on the part of the auditor to take the risk of doing the audit in a pure COVID environment. And let us also see post May 3rd what happens, because we are not sure. Sometime on the 1st of May, we are going to get the announcement from the government as to whether we would open up in a staggered manner, or whether the lockdown will extend and things like that. So where there is the slightest risk, I think we should try to avoid. But where everything, like as you rightly mentioned, technology companies are where you can get everything digitally, you can go ahead and do the audit. That is what
In
you
fact,
said in sum and substance.
in these technology companies, what they did was they brought in computers to the homes of our professionals and said, we will install our systems in your houses, which are secure systems, which have all those protocols in and through which you can access our systems. Now, only a technology company can do that. Everybody can't come and provide, in 100 of your staff, they can't provide in their homes, come and give computers, and non-technology companies won't be able to do. Because if a technology company is employing 4 lakhs people, they will easily have 4 lakh systems available, which are part of their system. So it only needs pairing some of it. So that is hugely possible, and that was what was happening. But otherwise, no. And really, as you put it, Sumantra, 2 things. One is there are situations where a company is unable to prepare its financials because it doesn't know, uncertain, it doesn't know its level of inventories, the quality of inventory. It's not able to project the future. Till the lockdown is over, it can't. The second is where it's able to prepare, but auditors are not able to audit because, as Vivek rightly said, the documents may be manual. He may not be able to. They are not in a digital environment. Those two situations will naturally push the dates, and one can't take any chances in that.
Yes, thank you, Ramesh sir. In fact, ACE is grateful. Vivek, you have to say something?
No, thank you.
So ACE is really grateful to you for spending your valuable time today. Monday morning, we know of Monday morning blues, but now every day is a Sunday actually for us. So for spending the Monday morning with all of us, and I thank you once again. And we conclude today's morning.
Thank you, everybody, once again for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramesh, for joining.
Only Ramesh sir, only one thing, if you could share the PPT with the ACE.
Yeah, you should send the mail ID. I will say.
Yes.
Sir, I will send you. You can send
I
it.
will
We will
do.
update. We will update in the
Right.
Right. Thank you, sir. Thank you.